Officer, I live here. This is my house.
We received a call about a break-in. The homeowner reported someone
I am the
inside.
homeowner. I've lived here 30 years.
The caller said a suspicious man was entering through the back door. I need to see some ID.
Officer Rebecca had been with the Portland Police Department for 8 years when she responded to a break-in call that would completely change how she saw her job, her community, and what it means to serve. She was 32 years old, experienced enough to handle routine calls, young enough to still believe every call had a clear villain and victim. One Tuesday afternoon at a modest home on Maple Street, she arrived expecting to arrest a burglar. What she found instead was 68-year-old James Porter, a widowed veteran trying to get into his own home, reported by a neighbor who had never bothered to meet him in the 6 months since she moved in next door. What happened next, captured entirely on body camera footage, would go viral with 47 million views, spark a neighborhood revolution, expose the dangers of assumption-based policing, and prove that sometimes the most heartwarming stories come from the most heartbreaking misunderstandings. Before we dive deeper into this absolutely shocking story, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Your country, your state, wherever you are. And if you believe in holding authority figures accountable when they abuse their power, hit that subscribe button. The 911 call came in at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. The voice was female, mid-30s, breathless with that particular kind of panic that dispatch operators recognize immediately. Genuine fear or practice drama? This one sounded genuine. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone breaking into the house next door. A man. He's trying to get in through the back door. He keeps trying different ways to open it. Is he still there now? Yes. He's at the back of the house. I can see him from my kitchen window. He looks, I don't know, he looks like he doesn't belong here. Please send someone quickly. The dispatcher logged the address. 2847 Maple Street, Portland. Residential break-in in progress. Suspect still on scene. She sent the call out to patrol units in the area. 2 units responded immediately. Officer Rebecca and her partner, Officer Jason Cruz. Rebecca and Cruz were 4 minutes away when they got the call. They had been partners for 2 years, worked well together, trusted each other's instincts. Cruz drove while Rebecca reviewed the address on their computer. No prior calls to this address. No history of break-ins on this street. Quiet neighborhood. Mostly older residents, families, people who had lived there for decades. Probably a junkie looking for something to steal, Cruz said, pulling onto Maple Street. Rebecca nodded, but something felt off. Junkies did not usually break into houses in broad daylight in residential neighborhoods where people were home. They hit houses that were clearly empty, worked at night, moved fast. But a call was a call, and someone had reported a break-in in progress. They pulled up to 2847 Maple Street at 2:51 p.m. The house was a small single-story ranch-style home, pale yellow siding, white trim, flower boxes in the windows, well-maintained lawn. American flag hanging from the porch. Wind chimes tinkling in the breeze. It looked like every other house on the street. Peaceful, safe, normal. But what would they find when they walked around back? Rebecca and Cruz stepped out of the patrol car, hands instinctively near their weapons, eyes scanning the property. The front door was closed. No broken windows. No signs of forced entry from the front. They moved around the side of the house, following the driveway toward the back. As they rounded the corner, they saw him, an older white man, maybe late 60s, gray hair, wearing khaki pants and a button-down shirt. He was standing at the back door, hand on the doorknob, trying to turn it. He had a small garden spade in his other hand. Police, step away from the door, Rebecca called out, her voice firm and commanding. The man turned, startled. His expression showed confusion, not guilt, not the look of someone caught committing a crime, more like someone interrupted while doing something completely normal. Officer, I live here. This is my house. Rebecca kept her distance, hand still near her weapon. Cruz positioned himself to the side, watching the man's hands. The garden spade could be a weapon. The door could hide accomplices inside. Sir, we received a call about a break-in at this address. The homeowner reported someone trying to enter the property illegally. The man's face shifted from confusion to understanding, then to something that looked like exhaustion. Like this was not the first time he had been questioned for existing in his own space. I am the homeowner. My name is James Porter. I've lived here for 30 years. But if he lived here, why was he breaking into the back door? While Rebecca questioned James at the back door, crews radio dispatched to get more information on the caller. Within seconds, the dispatcher confirmed the call had come from 2849 Maple Street, the house directly next door. The caller was identified as Amanda Richardson, 34 years old, had moved into the property 6 months ago. Rebecca kept her eyes on James while crews walked next door to speak with Amanda. She answered immediately, opening her door before crews even knocked. She had been watching from her window. Is he arrested? Amanda asked, her voice still carrying that anxious edge. Did you get him? Cruz kept his expression neutral. Ma'am, can you describe what you saw? A man, white guy, going around the back of the house next door. He was trying to get in through the back door. He had some kind of tool. It looked suspicious. The house belongs to an older man, I think, but I've never really seen him. I just know someone lives there. Cruz wrote notes. How long have you lived here? 6 months. And in those 6 months, have you ever seen the man who lives next door? Amanda hesitated. No, I guess not. I work from home, but I don't really pay attention. I just saw someone try to break in today, and I called. Better safe than sorry, right? Cruz nodded slowly. Better safe than sorry. Except when sorry means calling the police on your neighbor because you never bothered to introduce yourself. Because you assumed a white man at a house must be a criminal instead of a homeowner. But was James really the homeowner? Or was there more to this story? Back at the house, James stood calmly while Rebecca requested his identification. He reached slowly into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and handed over his driver's license. Rebecca examined it carefully. Name, James Anthony Porter. Address, 2847 Maple Street, Portland. Date of birth, March 15, 1956. The address matched. The photo matched. But Rebecca had been trained to verify everything. Mr. Porter, if this is your house, why were you trying to break into the back door? James sighed, the kind of sigh that carries 68 years of patience worn thin. I lost my keys this morning. Left them at the grocery store. Realized it when I got home. I keep a spare key hidden under the flower pot by the back door. The one I've kept there since 1994. Since my wife Mary told me I'd lock myself out someday and I'd need it. Rebecca looked at the flower pot. Small terracotta pot with pink geraniums. It sat next to the back door, exactly where someone would hide a spare key. So you were retrieving your spare key? I was trying to. The pot's heavier than it used to be. Dirt's packed in there solid after 30 years. I was using the garden spade to lift it enough to reach underneath. That's when your neighbor, who I've never met despite living next to her for 6 months, decided I was breaking into my own home. Rebecca felt something shift in her chest. This was not a break-in. This was a man trying to get into his own house. A man who had lived here for 3 decades. A man who had been reported as suspicious by a neighbor who had never bothered to say hello. But there was still something that did not add up about this situation. Cruz returned from speaking with Amanda and pulled Rebecca aside. The neighbor confirmed she's never actually met him. Said she just assumed someone suspicious was breaking in. Rebecca looked back at James, still standing patiently by his back door. She made a decision. Mr. Porter, I apologize for confusion. Can we help you retrieve that key? James looked surprised. Police officers offering to help instead of assuming guilt. That would be kind of you, officer. Cruz used a garden spade to carefully lift the flower pot. Underneath, pressed into the dirt, was a small plastic bag with a single key inside. Exactly where James said it would be. Exactly where it had been since 1994. James took the key, unlocked his back door, and stepped inside. Rebecca noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear. From something else. Emotion, maybe. frustration, sadness. Mr. Porter, may we come inside for a moment? Just to complete our report. James nodded and led them into his kitchen. The house was immaculate. Clean counters, dishes washed and put away. Everything organized with military precision. On the refrigerator were photographs held up by magnets. James in an army uniform, young, maybe 20 years old. Another photo of James with a woman, both smiling, clearly in love. More photos of the same woman at different ages. The most recent showed her with gray hair, laughing at something off camera. Rebecca noticed James looking at the photos. Is that your wife? Was. Mary passed 3 years ago. Lung cancer. Never smoked a day in her life. But cancer doesn't care about that. The kitchen suddenly felt heavier. This was not just a house. This was a home. 30 years of memories. A lifetime of love. And a neighbor had called 911 because she saw a white man trying to enter it. But what Rebecca saw next would change everything she thought she knew about this call. On the wall of James's living room hung a shadow box frame. Inside were military medals, ribbons, insignia, and a folded American flag. Rebecca stepped closer to examine them. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Vietnam Service Medal, Combat Infantryman Badge, Army Commendation Medal, National Defense Service Medal. You served in Vietnam? Rebecca asked. James nodded. 2 tours. 1975 to 1977. 101st Airborne Division. I was 19 when I enlisted. Came home at 21. Saw things number 21-year-old should see. Cruz stood next to Rebecca, reading the commendation certificate beside the shadow box. You earned the Bronze Star for valor. It says here you pulled 3 wounded soldiers from a burning vehicle under enemy fire. I did what anyone would do. My brothers were in danger. You don't leave brothers behind. Rebecca felt her throat tighten. This man had served his country with distinction, had earned medals for bravery, had come home and built a life, bought a house, married his wife, lived here for 30 years. And today, a neighbor who had never met him called the police because he looked suspicious trying to enter his own home. Mr. Porter, I'm very sorry about what happened today. James waved a hand dismissively. It's not your fault, officer. You were doing your job. You got a call. You responded. That's what you're supposed to do. But you shouldn't have to prove you belong in your own home. James smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Officer, I've been proving I belong in places for 68 years. This is just one more time. What happened next would turn this entire encounter into something neither officer expected. Rebecca's body camera had been recording everything since they arrived. Standard procedure. Every interaction documented. She was about to turn it off and close the call when James spoke again. Can I tell you something, officers? Something I want on that camera of yours. Rebecca nodded. Of course, sir. James sat down slowly in his recliner, the kind of chair that forms to your body after years of use. He looked at the camera on Rebecca's chest, then at both officers. I bought this house in 1994. Mary and I saved for 10 years to afford the down payment. Back then, this neighborhood was different. Some neighbors welcomed us, brought us cookies, introduced themselves. Others made it clear we weren't welcome. Anonymous notes in our mailbox. Garbage dumped on our lawn. Police called on us for having too many cars when we hosted family cookouts. Cruz shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Porter, let me finish. Please. I want this on record. James took a breath. Over the years, it got better. Neighbors got to know us. Mary volunteered at the school. I helped with Neighborhood Watch. We became part of the community. When Mary got sick, those same neighbors who had welcomed us brought us meals, drove her to treatments, sat with her when I had to work. This street became our family. Rebecca could see where this was going, and it hurt. 3 years ago, Mary died. I've lived alone since then, kept to myself mostly. Grief does that. And in those 3 years, the neighborhood has changed. New families moved in, younger people. And I haven't made the effort to meet them because, honestly, I didn't have the energy. But I never thought that not introducing myself would make me suspicious in my own home. The weight of his words settled over the room. James was not angry. He was sad, disappointed, tired. But what came next would shock both officers and eventually millions of viewers. Officer Rebecca had a choice to make. She could thank James for his time, close the call, and move on to the next emergency. Standard procedure. No crime committed. Call resolved. Or she could do something different, something the body camera would record, something that might matter. She made her choice. Mr. Porter, would you mind if we spoke with your neighbor? The one who called. James looked surprised. Why? Because I think there's a conversation that needs to happen. And I think it should happen now, while we're here, so it's documented and respectful. Cruz caught Rebecca's eye. This was not standard procedure. This was going beyond the call. But he nodded. He understood what Rebecca was trying to do. James stood slowly. If you think it will help, officer, then yes. Let's go talk to my neighbor. The three of them walked next door. Rebecca knocked on Amanda Richardson's door. She answered immediately. Clearly had been watching again from her window. Did you arrest him? Is everything okay? Rebecca kept her voice calm and professional. Ma'am, this is your neighbor, James Porter. He's lived at 2847 Maple Street for 30 years. He's a decorated Vietnam veteran. He was trying to enter his own home today when you called 911 to report a break-in. Amanda's face went pale. Her eyes moved from Rebecca to James to Cruz and back. Oh my God, I didn't know. I just saw someone and I assumed. You assumed a white man trying to enter a house must be criminal. Rebecca let the words land. Not cruel, firm. What Amanda said next would determine if the story had a heartwarming ending or remained just another example of bias. Amanda Richardson stood in her doorway, face flushed with embarrassment and something that looked like genuine shame. She looked at James directly for the first time. Mr. Porter, I am so sorry. I should have introduced myself when I moved in. I should have met my neighbors. I've been so busy with work and I made an assumption that was completely wrong and hurtful. James studied her carefully. Decades of experience reading people, deciding if apologies were genuine or performative. He saw something in Amanda's eyes. Real remorse. Ms. Richardson, I accept your apology, but I need you to understand something. When you see a white man and your first thought is criminal, that's not just an assumption. That's bias. And when you call the police based on that bias, people die. I'm lucky these officers verified before they escalated. Not everyone is that lucky. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'm ashamed. I don't know how to fix this. James was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that would become the viral moment of the body camera footage. You fix it by doing better. Starting now. Starting with actually getting to know your neighbors. Starting with questioning your assumptions before you act on them. And starting with understanding that this street, this neighborhood, belongs to all of us, not just the people who look like you. Rebecca's body camera captured every word, every expression, the genuine remorse on Amanda's face, the patient wisdom in James's voice, the moment when a call about a break-in became a lesson in community and humanity. But the story was not over yet. What happened in the next 24 hours would turn this into something bigger than anyone expected. Officer Rebecca filed a report that evening. Break-in call resolved. No crime committed. Misunderstanding between neighbors. Standard report language. But she did something else. She flagged the body camera footage for her supervisor with a note. This footage shows important community policing and conflict resolution. Recommend review for training purposes. Her supervisor, Sergeant David Chun, watched the footage the next morning. Then he watched it again. Then he called Rebecca into his office. Rebecca, this footage is remarkable. It shows exactly what we're trying to teach. Verification before escalation. Respect for community members. De-escalation through communication. I want to use this for training, but I need permission from Mr. Porter first. Rebecca drove back to Maple Street that afternoon. James was in his front yard, watering the flower boxes that Mary had planted years ago and that he still maintained. He saw Rebecca's patrol car and walked over, no fear or hesitation in his approach. "Officer Rebecca, everything all right? Mr. Porter, I wanted to ask you something. The body camera footage from yesterday, my department wants to use it for training, to show other officers how to handle calls like this, to show the importance of verification and respect, but we need your permission." James considered this. If it helps other officers do better, then yes, you have my permission. What James did not know was that Sergeant Chin had a colleague at the Portland Police Public Affairs Office who saw the footage and recognized its power. With James's permission documented, they released a brief edited version to the department's social media accounts with the caption, "This is what good community policing looks like." A call about a break-in led to a conversation about community, respect, and doing better. The video was posted at 3 p.m. on Thursday. By Friday morning, it had 2 million views. By Friday night, 10 million. By Sunday, 47 million people had watched James Porter tell his story, watched Amanda Richardson apologize, watched Officer Rebecca facilitate a conversation that healed instead of harmed. But the viral attention brought something unexpected that would change Maple Street forever. The comments on the viral video were overwhelmingly supportive of James. People shared their own stories of being profiled in their own neighborhoods. Veterans thanked James for his service. Community organizers use a video as an example of why say something culture can be dangerous when filtered through bias. But the most significant response came from Maple Street itself. Neighbors who had never met James started showing up at his door. They brought cookies, flowers, handwritten apologies for not introducing themselves sooner. They shared phone numbers. They invited him to block parties and cookouts. They asked about Mary, looked at photos, listened to stories. Sandra Martinez, who lived 3 houses down, knocked on James's door on Monday morning. "Mr. Porter, I'm Sandra. I've lived here for 4 years, and I'm ashamed I never introduced myself. I'm a teacher at Roosevelt High School. I'd like to invite you to speak to my history class about your Vietnam service, if you'd be comfortable with that." James was overwhelmed. I don't know if I'm much of a speaker. You told your story on that video, and 47 million people heard it. You're a better speaker than you think. Another neighbor, Robertson, organized a neighborhood welcome event specifically for James. "We're calling it Meet Your Neighbors, but really it's finally Meet James. We should have done this 30 years ago, but better late than never." Amanda Richardson did more than apologize. She created a neighborhood directory with photos and brief bios of every resident on Maple Street, delivered to every mailbox. She organized monthly coffee meetings at the community center. She became the person who made sure new neighbors were welcomed immediately, personally, deliberately. But the most touching response came from an unexpected source. 3 days after the video went viral, a white SUV pulled up in front of James's house. 4 men stepped out, all in their late 60s and early 70s, all wearing Vietnam veterans' baseball caps. James was sitting on his porch and stood slowly, recognizing what he was seeing even before they reached his driveway. The tallest man extended his hand. "James Porter? I'm Robert Jackson. This is Michael Torres, David Williams, and Henry Lee. We all served in Vietnam. Different units, different years. But we saw your video and we had to meet you. Had to tell you. We see you, brother. We know what you've lived through, and we're proud to know you." James shook each hand, his eyes wet. "I haven't talked to many other veterans. After I came home, I just tried to move forward, build a life. Didn't look back much." "We understand," Michael Torres said, "but there's a group of us who meet every Thursday at the VFW Hall on Morrison Street. We'd be honored if you join us." That Thursday, James walked into the VFW Hall for the first time in 46 years. 15 Vietnam veterans, men who had carried the same weight, seen the same horrors, come home to the same complicated America. They welcomed him like he had been there all along. He met weekly with them after that, found community he did not know he was missing, found men who understood nightmares he had never talked about, found brotherhood that Mary had always encouraged him to seek, but that he had been too proud or scared to find. The video had not just healed his relationship, with his neighborhood. It had connected him to a family of veterans who became his closest friends. But there was still one more person who needed to reckon with what had happened. Rebecca watched the video go viral and felt conflicted. People were praising her for how she handled the call, calling her a model officer, saying she represented the best of community policing. But Rebecca kept thinking about what almost happened. She pulled Cruz aside one evening after shift. "Jason, we could have escalated that situation. If James had been less calm, if he had argued more forcefully, if he had reached for that key without explaining first, we could have drawn weapons. We could have tackled him. We could have made this a completely different kind of viral video." Cruz nodded. "But we didn't. We verified. We listened." Only because he was calm. Only because he has had 68 years of practice de-escalating situations where people assume the worst about him. He did the work to keep himself safe. That's not right. That shouldn't be on him. Rebecca requested a meeting with her sergeant and the chief. She brought data she had compiled. How many calls like this came in each month? How many involved people of color in their own homes, own cars, own spaces being reported as suspicious? How many could have ended badly if the person reported had not been exceptionally calm and compliant? "We need better training," Rebecca told them. "We need to teach officers to question the caller's assumptions, not just the subject's actions. We need to verify before we escalate, every single time." Chief Morrison listened carefully. "Officer Rebecca, you're right, and I want you to help develop that training. You and Mr. Porter, if he's willing." James agreed. Over the next 6 months, he and Rebecca worked with the police academy to create a training module on assumption-based calls, how to recognize bias in dispatch reports, how to verify before escalating, how to de-escalate through respect and communication. The module became mandatory for all Portland police officers and was later adopted by 23 other departments across the state. But the most powerful change happened in a place nobody expected. Amanda Richardson could not let go of what she had done. The apology was not enough. The neighborhood directory was not enough. She kept thinking about James's words. "People die because of assumptions like yours." She started researching. How many people of color were harmed or killed after someone called police to report them as suspicious for ordinary activities? Barbecue Becky, Permit Patty, Golf Cart Gail. Cases with viral nicknames because they happened so often they needed their own taxonomy. She found data. In 2020, 42% of false police reports that led to violent confrontations involved people of color reported by white callers who later admitted they just felt something was wrong. No specific threat, no actual crime, just a feeling based on racial bias. Amanda started a blog documenting these cases, interviewing people who had been reported for birdwatching, waiting for an Uber, entering their own apartments. She wrote about implicit bias, about the weaponization of 911 calls, about how concern could be deadly when filtered through racism. Her blog gained followers. She spoke at schools, community centers, police departments. She always started the same way. "I called 911 on my neighbor because he was white. I want to tell you how I almost got a decorated veteran killed, because I never bothered to introduce myself." Her talks were raw, honest, painful. She did not position herself as a hero who learned better. She positioned herself as someone who had done something terrible and was spending the rest of her life trying to prevent others from making the same mistake. James attended one of her talks at Roosevelt High School, the same school where he had spoken about Vietnam. Afterward, they spoke privately. "Amanda, you're doing good work. Important work. It doesn't fix what I did to you. No, but it might prevent someone else from doing it to someone else. That matters." What neither of them knew was that someone in that audience would soon need exactly that lesson. 6 months after the viral video, Officer Rebecca responded to another call. Different address, different neighborhood, same basic setup. Suspicious person trying to enter a residence. Rebecca arrived to find a young white woman, maybe 25 years old, sitting on the front porch of a house holding a key. A white woman in her 40s stood across the street, phone in hand, watching. Rebecca approached the young woman first, not the caller. "Good afternoon, ma'am. What's your name? Shanice Williams. This is my grandmother's house. She's in the hospital. I'm here to pick up some things for her. But my key isn't working. I think she changed the locks after the last break-in. Rebecca examined the key, then the door. New lock, old key. Simple explanation. She walked over to the caller. What did you see, ma'am? A person I don't recognize trying to get into Doris's house. Doris is elderly. She's in the hospital. I was concerned someone was taking advantage. Rebecca asked a critical question, the one her new training taught her to ask. How well do you know Doris? We wave hello when we see each other. Do you know if she has family? The caller hesitated. I don't know. Rebecca turned to Shanice. Do you have any way to verify your relationship to the homeowner? Shanice pulled out her phone, showed photos of herself with an elderly white woman, birthday parties, Christmases, graduations. This is my grandma, Doris Williams. I can call the hospital and have him confirm I'm listed as family. I can show you my ID showing my last name matches hers. Rebecca did verify, called the hospital, confirmed Shanice was authorized family. Then she did something else. She called a neighbor over. Ma'am, this is Shanice Williams, Doris's granddaughter. She's here to get items for her grandmother who is in the hospital. You called because you didn't recognize her. That's understandable if you don't know Doris well. But next time, maybe introduce yourself first. Ask if someone needs help before assuming they're committing a crime. The caller looked embarrassed, but nodded. Rebecca gave Shanice her card. I'll help you contact a locksmith for your grandmother. And I'm sorry you had to go through this. Shanice smiled tiredly. Officer, I'm used to it. But thank you for handling it the way you did. Rebecca drove away thinking about James Porter, about how many times he'd been used to it, about how the system was slowly changing, one call at a time, but not fast enough. What she did not know was that this call was also being recorded and would become part of a larger story. The Portland Police Department released the body camera footage from Rebecca's second call with Shanice Williams, paired with the original James Porter footage. They created a before and after narrative showing how assumption-based calls could be handled differently. The training module James and Rebecca developed became part of the Oregon Law Enforcement Certification Program. Every police officer in the state was required to complete it. The module included recognizing bias in dispatch calls, questioning caller assumptions before arriving, approaching the subject with respect, not suspicion, verifying through multiple methods before escalating, educating callers about the harm of assumption-based reports. 23 police departments across 6 states adopted the training. Rebecca was invited to speak at national law enforcement conferences. James spoke alongside her, always emphasizing the same point. Officers don't create the bias, but they have the power to stop it from becoming deadly. The training saved lives. Documented cases where officers used verification techniques that prevented violent escalation. A man birdwatching in New York. A woman entering her apartment in Atlanta. A teenager waiting for his school bus in Detroit. All reported as suspicious. All verified and released safely because officers had been trained to question assumptions. But the real victory was not just in preventing harm. It was in building community. Maple Street became a model neighborhood, not because it was perfect, but because it was intentional. The monthly coffee meetings Amanda started became standing events. New neighbors were welcomed with baskets and introductions within days of moving in. The neighborhood directory was updated quarterly with photos and contact information. Block parties happened 4 times a year, organized by rotating hosts. A shared garden was created in an empty lot, where neighbors grew vegetables together. James became the unofficial neighborhood historian. He knew who needed help with yard work, who was struggling financially, who had just lost a job or a family member. He organized meal trains, checked on elderly neighbors, welcomed new families personally. His house, once a place where he grieved alone, became a gathering spot. Weekly coffee on his porch, veterans meetings in his living room, neighborhood kids stopping by to hear stories about the old days. Mary's flower boxes, which he had maintained alone for 3 years, were now tended by a rotation of neighbors who wanted to honor her memory and help James keep them blooming. The transformation was not just physical, it was relational. People knew each other, looked out for each other, questioned their own assumptions before acting on them. And it all started because a break-in call was handled with verification and respect instead of assumption and escalation. But James still had one more surprise that would bring everything full circle. On Memorial Day, 18 months after the viral video, Maple Street held a special ceremony. The city installed a memorial bench at the neighborhood park with a plaque that read, "In memory of Mary Porter, who helped make this neighborhood a community, and in honor of James Porter, who reminded us what community means." But that was not the only ceremony that day. The Portland Police Department presented James with a Civilian Service Award for his work developing the bias recognition training that had now been adopted by 47 police departments across the country. Chief Morrison made the presentation personally. "Mr. Porter, you turned a painful experience into education that has saved lives. You gave us your time, your wisdom, your story. You made us better officers and better people." James accepted the award surrounded by his neighbors, his veteran brothers, Officer Rebecca and Cruz, and Amanda Richardson, who had become one of his closest friends. In his acceptance speech, James said, "I didn't set out to change anything. I just wanted to get into my house that day. But what happened after showed me that pain can become purpose if we're brave enough to use it." Amanda was brave enough to admit her mistake. Officer Rebecca was brave enough to facilitate a hard conversation. This neighborhood was brave enough to change. And I'm grateful to be part of a community that chose growth over grudges. The ceremony ended with neighborhood cookout where James, for the first time since Mary died, felt surrounded by family again. Different family than he had imagined, but family nonetheless. What started as the worst day had somehow become the catalyst for the best transformation. 3 years after the break-in call, that was not a break-in, James Porter still lives at 2847 Maple Street. He's 71 now. His health is good. His spirit is better. He's surrounded by neighbors who are genuinely friends, by veterans who are genuinely brothers, by a community that learned to be intentional about inclusion. Amanda Richardson still lives next door. She married a man she met at one of the neighborhood coffee meetings. She continues her speaking work about bias and assumption-based policing. She credits James with teaching her that apologies mean nothing without change behavior. Officer Rebecca was promoted to sergeant. She oversees community policing initiatives for the Portland Police Department. She still patrols sometimes by choice because she says that's where the real work happens. Every call is a chance to verify instead of assume, to de-escalate instead of escalate, to see people instead of suspects. The training module James and Rebecca created has now been adopted by 83 police departments across 14 states. It's credited with preventing at least 47 documented violent escalations that could have become tragedies. Maple Street remains a model neighborhood. New residents are welcomed immediately. Assumptions are questioned. Community is chosen deliberately every single day. The viral video has 89 million views now. Comments still pour in. People sharing their own stories. Police departments asking for training resources. Neighbors pledging to do better. And James Porter, the decorated veteran who was reported as a criminal for trying to enter his own home, spends his days tending Mary's flower boxes, drinking coffee with neighbors who have become family, and reminding everyone who will listen. Community isn't something you have. It's something you build. One introduction, one conversation, one choice to see people as neighbors instead of strangers. So here's my question. Should neighborhoods be required to have welcome programs for new residents? Should 911 dispatch operators be trained to question caller assumptions before sending police? And should officers who fail to verify before escalating face consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments. This story proves that even the most painful misunderstandings can become catalysts for beautiful change. But it also shows that change requires courage, humility, and the willingness to do better. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.